Hello everyone, my name is David Varsimashvili. Are compliance regulations becoming so complex that they are killing the businesses? This compliance is no longer a side function. It's a core operational requirement. Annual assessment is no longer just a regulatory requirement. It's a fundamental necessity to safeguard organizations from financial, legal, and reputational risks. Do sanctions work or not? The answer is both yes and no.
Hello, everyone, and welcome you to this webinar brought to you by the Soltesz Institute. My name is Viktoria Soltesz, and I'm the founder of the Institute, and we are fighting for a standardized, ethical, and transparent payment and banking industry. As we know, payment and banking affect every area of the organization today, from the user experience to the financial aspect, compliance, and of course, technology. And when we are talking about technology, it's very, very important to understand what are the emerging technologies, what are the fintech industry is involved at the moment, and how do we see the future of finance. And when we are talking about the future of any technology today, we have to talk about AI. So today we are going to talk about the emerging technologies in banking and AI from the artificial intelligence perspective. And I've got the best person to tell us everything about emerging technologies and AI, Stylianos. Welcome, Stylianos, and thank you very much for joining us today. Tell us a bit more about yourself and how did you end up in technology and AI specifically? What do you do? How you make the world to a better place?
Yeah, thank you, Victoria. I'm very happy for being here with you today. So I've been in the space of AI and data science for my whole career. So essentially, I started off with the intention to become an academic in the area of cognitive science and computational neuroscience. But then I transitioned to artificial intelligence and machine learning. So I was and still am in certain ways in academia, but most of my career in the last 5 to 10 years or so has been around consulting, especially for startups and scale-ups that want to create their own IP or better understand how to utilize machine learning and data science. And as you can understand, the last few years with the advances we've been witnessing in artificial intelligence, a lot of the work that I've been doing is on large language models and, what's now being called AI, things like ChatGPT, Claude, etc. And also a part of my work is in education, not only in consulting and solution development, but also educating professionals as to how they should go about acquiring the right skills to survive in the upcoming era of AI.
I think education is an absolute minefield today because there are a lot of information which is hidden in the expert's mind. And this is very, very important to understand what we need to do when we are running a business to have the right consultants, to have the right education. And this is exactly what we are doing here in the Soltesz Institute, bringing the experts and bringing the knowledge to anyone who is interested in payments and banking related subjects. So thank you so much for joining us. as usual, we collected a couple of questions from the audience before we have this webinar, and we've got really, really interesting questions. To be honest with you, I just added a couple of my questions as well. So it gives a nice skeleton to the conversation. So let's jump in immediately. What emerging technologies are shaping the global banking industry, and how might they refine retail and corporate banking? And I think this question is really about the emerging technologies, specifically in finance and banking. What do you think? Where are we going? And what are the latest technologies other than the obvious?
Yeah, so I think the biggest technologies right now are AI as well as crypto. So in terms of AI, what we're seeing wider adoption of artificial intelligence across different industries, and payments, finance, banking are not an exception to this rule. As a matter of fact, I was reading the other day about how Stripe trained a new machine learning model using new AI techniques based on transformers, and they trained that model on a huge number of payments in order to better understand the transaction data. It's not entirely clear how this can be used downstream, but I presume it can be used in all sorts of ways, from detecting fraud to optimizing transaction flows. At the same time, in crypto, what we're seeing is the emergence of stablecoins as a very good method of moving money around. So we're seeing big institutional players investing heavily in this direction, while at the same time, there seems to be now some kind of consensus as to Bitcoin being some kind of store of wealth. So I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the next few years. So I don't think these two areas are necessarily connected, that is crypto and AI, but there's definitely the common theme that they are going to, what's the best word to say? We're going to re-innovate some of them existing, let's say, pipelines in the financial and payment sector through both technologies. So we should be expecting things to become faster, hopefully cheaper in the long run, even though it still remains to be seen. It's in certain ways, even though we're talking about both AI and crypto, even if AI in different shapes or forms have been around for more than a century and crypto has been around for more than 10 years, it's still kind of early days, simply because we're talking about like the global payments network, the global financial system is an incredibly interconnected web of many different entities, right? So I think we're still essentially in the early days of adoption there.
I think we can agree that when we are talking about banking, mainly the international banking rails, that they are based on massive legacy systems. And there is a legit question to ask that how come that I'm sending money from one part of the world to another, it takes still 3 to 4 days to be cleared, where I can give a call to anyone in the world and my voice is going through immediately. And I think this is the main driver to make everything much quicker. But when it comes to safety, and mainly when we are talking about, crypto or these emerging technologies, which are not necessarily regulated in the same way as the traditional fiat money, maybe there could be some issues around that, right? So when we are talking about crypto, what do you think that obviously there are the benefits, which is the speed and security and whatnot. But if you think about, just let's stick with crypto, what is your personal opinion about crypto? Is it a blessing or is it a curse? Is it something that we will see more of? You mentioned obviously the stable coins. Where do you think all of these regulation is going to lead us at one point? It's just, I'm curious about your personal opinion here.
Yeah, so I think crypto is amazing. It can be used to solve various problems, but the challenge is because crypto is fundamentally an infrastructure technology. We've seen countless projects, but very little real-world adoption. So in terms of payments and stable coins, I think they are a very easy solution to a complex problem, that is how to move money around fast and cheaply. And I do expect the stable coins will be widely adopted within the next 2 to 3 years, 5 years maximum. In terms of other crypto-related projects, like whether you look into Ethereum as a virtual computer, Polkadot, Solana, Avalanche, there are many different projects, and you also have to look into real-world assets and all that. I think there's a lot of possibilities there to decentralize parts of what is now a centralized architecture, to give more ownership to the actual users, and to make ideally things faster. But there are a lot of missing pieces still, right? So with some of these blockchains, a missing piece can be the speed or the volume of transactions, or so maybe they are decentralized, but they're slow and they can accept a large number of transactions, or they might be expensive. This was essentially Ethereum before some upgrades they did. So I think the picture in this regard is mixed. So everyone is investing money in crypto with the intention, the belief that this is going to go up, and it kind of will, but things now seem to be all over the place. And obviously there's still also regulation and things like that. Most of the regulation now revolves around, let's say, I think, stable coins and assets and all that. But there's still not a clear picture, So I definitely believe that cryptocurrencies, crypto Web3, they're going to be adopted more and more widely over the next few years. But other than stable coins, potentially real world assets, it's difficult to really predict which blockchains are going to dominate and why and in what problems. Like, for example, take Solana, right? So Solana, it was a blockchain that was very overhyped. Then it went nearly down to zero, and then all of a sudden it skyrocketed, and everyone was releasing meme coins on Solana. And there were a lot of people, including myself, who never predicted that meme coins would become so popular because they have no real utility. And now meme coins are dead, right? So we see these crazy things in crypto which kind of make it unpredictable. But the common thread of crypto is being adopted, at least to, I'd say not at a super fast pace, but yes, on a regular pace, right? So we can expect that within 5 to 10 years, at least half of the population in developing countries will have done some kind of crypto transaction. And that's probably also another thing that I want to stress out, that is, there's a lot of interest around cryptocurrencies in developing countries because whether it's stable coins or other assets, they can fix a lot of the problems that traditional currencies, fiat currencies face. Like, for example, in developing economies, you can have issues with moving money around, you have issues with the volatility between different pairs, and some tokens or stable coins or otherwise can definitely help with some of that.
I think we are talking about fintech. Tech is obviously one part of the equation, but there is the financial aspect, which is the regulation, right? And the whole idea of the regulation is to filter out all of those creative businesses and individuals who would like to take advantage of these regulatory loopholes, maybe do a bit of tax evasion, maybe hide some money from the tax office. And obviously, the regulation has to be the same everywhere to have the trust what crypto transactions need. And when we are looking at AI, the next question is really about how will artificial intelligence, including generative AI, transform banking in the coming years. But I would like to also ask you that, what do you think personally with the AI? Because it's a very much of a double-edged sword. Now I can create utility bills. Now I can create fake passports. Now I can even vibe code new blockchains and figure out my own crypto token and then start doing creative tax evasion or even scamming people. So what do you think? Of course, there are some benefits on, artificial intelligence in banking, but in your opinion, what are the biggest threats around that as well? And where are we going to be in a couple of years where we can't really believe anything that we see online?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think in banking, most of the current applications of AI, they're probably a bit boring, but useful, and they're around cost cutting. I remember going through a piece of research, probably it was McKinsey, I can't really remember now, but it looks like most financial institutions involved in the use and adoption of AI now, they care about cost cutting, replacing employees with AI and things like that. Yeah. Customer support, everything moving online or more things moving online and so on and so forth. It makes perfect sense because a lot of these operations now are taking place by humans, and they can be brittle, and at the same time they can be easy to change. Like you replace a customer support agent with an AI, or you have an AI, one human for, let's say, instead of having 10 humans, you have one human, and you still have the AI as the first line of support. So yeah, I'd say these are like the first use cases that come to mind. Now, obviously, there are, let's say, fancier use cases, around using AI to do all sorts of things, optimize pipelines, optimize profit investment and all that. I'm not sure if big financial institutions are gonna take action there. Smaller shops definitely do. So I know that hedge funds, and maybe this is also now the case in investment banking, I know that hedge funds are heavily investing in applications of LLMs to do things like analysis of financial statements and potential investments and so on and so forth. So that's probably like another application there, which maybe it's not like mainstream banking, that's like investment banking. So I'd say, yeah, these are the first things that come to mind.
And when we're thinking about AI taking over jobs, maybe we can also talk about how does it remove responsibility? Because if we are trusting the outcome of a machine learning to invest and make decisions, and sometimes we don't even know what is the reason for those decisions, and what is the responsibility which stays with the onboarding team, with the compliance team, with the actually brokerages and the investment firms and the hedge funds in case something goes wrong, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I think that recently I read that, was it Klarna, I think, that they were rolling back. So Klarna was very aggressive with AI adoption, right? So they replaced nearly all of their agents with AI. And now they're rolling back some of these changes because they realized that humans, they're okay speaking with an AI agent, but they still want to know that there is a human they can reach out to if they need to. So I think there's also a cultural aspect into this, that I can imagine a world where people are okay interacting with other people through AI, and then interacting not with other people, but directly interacting with an AI. I just don't think that we're there yet. So I can imagine maybe in 2 generations from now, people are so exposed to AI that they're like, yeah, I'm happy just never having to deal with a human agent in person or online, and I can do everything through an AI agent. But I don't think we're there yet. It's like very big of a change. And also AI is still like, it's not in its infancy, but it's not super advanced either, right? So it's kind of programmed to do certain things, and you can't really tell how well tested something is, right? So if something goes wrong, you still need to speak to a support line and hope that the person you're speaking with is not an AI agent, but is a human.
Sometimes, you're just wishing it was AI because it understands you sometimes better than certain customer service agents, right?
Yeah.
When you're getting the frustration that you're trying to explain something to someone and the person just doesn't really get it, maybe sometimes AI is going to be the help. But I love how optimist you are, saying that it's going to happen in 2 generations. Maybe it's even going to happen in 2 years, maybe in 5 years. So I think it's only time going to tell. But I think banking could really implement a lot of other new technological parts as well, not just necessarily replacing the customer service agents and doing the automated trading, but when it comes to compliance, when it comes to data security, when it comes to other elements of banking, maybe even finding the best financial products for domestic and corporate banking clients as well. Maybe AI can be also replacing a lot of other parts that today you might not even think about, but later on, maybe that could be really helping banking, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think this is not, let's say, banking specific. I think it's going to be done in every industry, but we should never underestimate cultural factors in the adoption of any new technology. By culture, I mean that we're used to certain things, and this shapes our behavior in the long run. So in organizations, they change, but the bigger an organization, the slower the change, right? So in terms of AI adoption, I think we've seen in the last, let's say, couple of decades, the new generations of humans, they're digital first, right? Digital natives, as they call them. Okay. So I'm not a digital native. I had my first computer when I was like 8 or 9 years old, but I didn't grow up with the internet. The internet became available when I was like 11 or 12 or something. So we didn't have smartphones back then. So I think the new generations that grow up that are raised with a phone and an AI, they will be like, this will shape their behavior in ways that we can't necessarily anticipate what this will look like, but my expectation would be that they might just feel more comfortable speaking with an AI instead of a human agent for whatever reason. So I'd say, yes, AI adoption will take place in one shape or form. It's probably smaller businesses, to be honest with you, that can benefit the most from it because they're better positioned in setting up their culture and operations in a way that is not that is not human operations heavy, and it's AI operations heavy. So I think this is also something that's important to stress out.
Clear. Let's see the aspect of the competition between the traditional banks and these new fintech companies, because we hear all of these innovations. We've got now open banking, we've got mobile payment, we've got buy now, pay later, we've got embedded finance, we got personalized finance and whatnot. And the poor traditional banks are still trying to catch up with all of these innovations. But what do you think? Should traditional banks see fintech startups as competitors, collaborators, or both? Even banks can turn into fintechs themselves, or fintechs will turn into banks, as we have seen with some giants recently. Started as a neobank and now they got the traditional banking license. What do you think? What is it out there now?
Yeah, I think that it's probably both, in the sense that it depends on the bank's strategic objectives and the actual fintech, right? So, for example, we've seen some fintech like Revolut that moved from, being a small neobank to being a unicorn. At the same time, there's other fintech startups that are focused on the whole strategies around just getting acquired by a bigger institution. And I think banks in the next 5 to 10 years, they will need to innovate around that. We see this happening with stablecoins and AI. They probably need to innovate more than they used to innovate in previous decades. But I don't see banks operating as fintech in the sense that they still have a very solid business model that most likely will not change anytime soon, right? It might through CBDCs, but that's a different conversation. It's a very long conversation as to how the CBDCs will materialize. And because, the banks are now so big that somehow have to stay, they're still going to be part of the system. So I'd say fintech, they can be both a competitor and a collaborator, depending on the type of fintech we're talking about. In most cases, what I guess the relationship between fintech startups and banks is that of an acquisition, right? That is, most fintech startups, they want to solve a problem that the bank might find it difficult to solve because it's very big to innovate in certain ways, and then an acquisition makes sense.
I think banks have a lot on their plate already because their responsibility is obviously to maintain a healthy society and a successful economical system, right? Keep the trust in the financial system, make sure that everyone has access to the traditional finance product. They provide a mortgage. They open account for individuals, even if they have 20 euros on it. So sometimes they are operating on a loss. So banks have a lot of legal and social responsibilities that they need to keep. And in the same time, they are expected to innovate and keep everything up to the standards where fintechs are operating. Be quick, be very reliable, use the latest technology. So there could be a bit of mixed understanding of what is the purpose of the banks as of today and what are the purpose of the fintechs. And when I see a lot that fintechs are getting away with a lot of regulatory burden and social responsibility simply because banks are the ones who are taking care of all of those reporting, because fintechs are piggybacking on the banks, right? If you have a fintech company, maybe you still need to keep all your client funds in the bank account. Maybe you are still using the banking rails for correspondent accounts to join your fintech to the international banking system and be able to send and receive money internationally. So what do you think? Is it too much responsibility on the banks and that's why they are not innovating, or they are just, being that pig in a barn when everything is good and they are not motivated enough to keep up with the latest because money is coming in anyway, and don't rock the boat don't change anything until we have to?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, really. So I can understand why a bank would want to innovate and break what is a business model that works, and by nature they have to be risk averse. At the same time, I expect that in terms of things like payments and so on and so forth, blockchain and stable coins aside, like blockchain in general, blockchain technology can help. It's just that everything is being held back because still like banks and the whole payments infrastructure and Swift and all that, it works even if it's a bit like old, people are used to it, and maybe there are less incentives to make changes, right? So I think the question of innovation and when should an organization innovate and how should always take place within the context of a risk-benefit analysis. And obviously banks weigh risk more than the benefits because they can always get bailed out or throw more money into a problem, right, in solving a problem. So I guess that's that. But I think as we're seeing, like both crypto as well as AI, like they open up so many opportunities for small players like never before. So in ways that were unexpected. For example, with AI now it's easier to write software and release a product than ever before. And with crypto, you have access to global decentralized finance architecture, which means there's still certain legal challenges and things like that, or converting fiat money to crypto and all that. But it's not very difficult for someone now to create, let's say, a lending app and connect to existing services that provide, let's say, borrowing and lending on DeFi or whatever. So for me, that's really, really exciting. Obviously, most things still take place through a bank, right? But I wouldn't be surprised if we see that, at least in developing economies where we don't have, let's say, these types of established players and structures, and the system is more brittle in certain ways, we might see some wide adoption of, certain ideas in technology, crypto or otherwise, and then maybe the developed world will follow. I think the Bitcoin reserve was a good example in El Salvador. It didn't work out too well in El Salvador, but it was a conversation starter for some of the things we're hearing now, like, the US is going to create a Bitcoin reserve and whatnot, and a Bitcoin ETF and whatnot. So you can see how sometimes like innovation really is the result of solving certain needs and problems.
Yes, and I think you mentioned a very, very important part with what allows startups to join in this ecosystem. So it's no longer the monopoly of the big banks. Today, you have an opportunity to write a couple of lines of code, get a quasi-banking license relatively cheap, or even go unregulated, piggybacking on crypto, right? And then you will be able to mimic the services and the products of the banking and provide all of those financial services. But, what is the risk that it's actually coming with? Because I have a lot of clients coming from a crypto background, and they tell me that, okay, you need a banking license to give a mortgage. However, you can actually have a lighter license or even not have a license in certain countries as well, where the crypto is not fully regulated yet. And then you can give these quasi loans through crypto. What do you think? And I think this is the next question about it. What impact could this blockchain and digital currencies have on all of these banking services, like giving the mortgage in my example, or payments, or lending, or trade finance, or anything? Because there are regulations for a reason. There is a reason why banks or financial institutions can do certain things and cannot do certain things. And now we are talking about blockchain and crypto, and a few creative individuals from a bedroom, they can actually mimic all these banking services without having the same level of license and security. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that is true. So I think you can do anything that you can do through a bank. You can do it with crypto, and even more easy and even more transparently. It's just what's holding everything back. Two issues. One is the ease of use, that these things are still usually not as accessible. You have to have as a user, you need to be somewhat familiar with crypto and things like that in order to use them. And secondly, there's all these regulatory issues. If you could just keep everything in crypto, then you wouldn't need to do anything else.
Everyone, my name is Viktoria Soltesz and I'm the founder of the Soltesz Institute. Startups fail, and if they fail, most probably they are failing because they don't have the thought out and proper channels for payments and banking.
Hello everyone, my name is David Vartimashvili compliance is no longer a side function. It's a core operational requirement.
Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Marcia Klingon-Smith. Instant payments is transforming the way money moves all across the globe, across all the different industries.
If you could just keep everything in crypto, then you wouldn't need to do anything else. And then you have a parallel system, right, compared to the traditional finance. At the same time, if you want to connect the two systems, you need some kind of license. So if you ask about the technology and the transparency, I think blockchain is superior. But if you're asking about things like user experience and the current level of adoption is still low. So I do think that the banks have realized, the banks and also companies like PayPal, Stripe, they realized what's coming. So they want a piece of the pie, right? And stablecoins is the first natural fit to say, instead of moving fiat money around, we're just going to move stablecoins. It's the most natural thing to do in the current environment.
You don't think that there's going to be any kind of risk to the current financial system if we are allow people to and businesses to give out loans unlimited? If we are allowing certain businesses to lend money, what could be the effect on the society when this is no longer a banking responsibility, but shift over to a small number of individuals who are taking advantage of this regulatory loophole that offering the same services, but because it's through crypto or stablecoin or whatnot, then they can actually do whatever they want. What do you think?
Yes, there are risks, but there are risks in banking and finance in general, right? Because, the financial crisis of 2008 wasn't the result of crypto. It was actually one of the reasons that gave birth to crypto. It's actually where I'm going with this. So I don't think that the fact that the solution is new or not as regulated is necessarily the end of the world. It will definitely create some problems for some individuals. And I think the problems usually arise when individuals and corporations that don't understand the risks when they're involved in something and how to balance them out, because if someone is happy with traditional finance, they can just stick to it, and that's it. But regardless, I think there are risks to everything new, whether we're talking about finance or something else. And we see this with AI a lot, like AI sometimes just giving the wrong responses, going haywire, hallucinating, and so on and so forth. So I think all of this has to be taken into account when a new technology emerges. But still, I expect that all this is going to play a big role in the near future, right? I do think we're going to see more, crypto-related companies. We might see more traditional, let's say, access to financing in novel ways and things like that.
Yes, and I agree with you completely that the current financial system is far from perfect, right? So we already see the cracks in this huge trust-based fiat system when things can get out of hand really, really quickly, and that's exactly what we see in 2008. And I think this is what we are also seeing today. That this system is based on trust. It's artificially maintained in a way that it's running the current society. And that's why it's so fragile. And that's why we need to defend it, because if that collapses, and we're not that far away from collapsing, then, what is the alternative? I think this is the main question. But when we're talking about joining into this banking and payments world, even with just basic level ideas, I have seen a lot of new innovations around banking as a service, the BOSS services. When you're not only just getting the software, but you are getting the licensed service, including the software as well. So it's a plug and play. You can then be a financial institution just by agreeing with a financially licensed institution who is also having the software, and then you can start onboarding clients like you were a bank, like you were a financial institution, e-money institution, payment institution, whatnot, and give financial services under this scheme. So what do you think? How are open banking and these banking as a service changing these financial services? What are the opportunities? How do they benefit, obviously, everyone? And how we can see that the collaboration is happening on a level when it's safe still for everyone, the users can pinpoint who is responsible for what services, and it doesn't get into this misleading, oh, I thought you are holding my funds, but actually you're just using the license of someone else who is also relying on some kind of bank.
So I think this will help with innovation. So I remember in the past, like helping a startup that was participating in some kind of open banking initiatives, getting access to data from banks to try and develop new products and all that. So I think that's definitely good for the consumer as well as for startups and entrepreneurs. Now, that being said, banking, even if you can sell the whole thing as a package, whether it's let's say software plus license, so on and so forth, is still, a complex affair in one way or another. So I still think that, it's a useful thing to do. It probably concerns a small, let's say, percentage of the population or the users. That's something we also saw at some point with crypto exchanges, which is a niche area, but there's a lot of crypto exchanges that have using the same software, which was white labeled, right? So I'm not sure if the license also was somehow part of the deal and how streamlined that was. But I guess it's interesting to see that the differences between, all of them, it's like the software is the same, and then the differences around marketing and sales and get listing of the best tokens and all that. There's probably a liability there in the sense that if there's a security issue in, the software, then you might see multiple exchanges being affected, and you would expect the same thing in banking. But I guess in traditional finance, this might be less of a concern compared to like other means of fraud.
And I think it comes down to education of the end users as well. Because if you think about the average business who is looking for a new bank account, how would they know how their money is being handled, where the money is being kept, right? They are trusting a front end, which is saying that they are providing these financial services. But if something goes wrong, the users still need to go through the nitty-gritty just to pinpoint that who is actually providing those financial services. Because if you think about it, all of these banking as a service kind of setups, then we see that these front-end providers who are purchasing this service and then opening it to the open public, they are just glorified resellers, right? Because under the name of Viktoria and Co, I'm actually using the banking as a service from Stylianos maybe. And then you have the responsibility to onboard the client, hold the funds, make sure that the security and regulation is being kept. And I am maybe not really taking that much of a responsibility other than just the sales and the marketing, right? So in this case, I think the education is super important to educate businesses to understand what is the risk of picking one provider, not the other. Where are they able to pinpoint who is providing these services, like roll down to the bottom of the page to pinpoint that who is licensing of what company, and then make the relevant decisions of they maybe even diversify the risk. And having an account with this provider and that provider and that provider doesn't mean that all of those providers are actually connected to one supplier at the end, right? And then you think that, I'm diversifying my risk, but it turns out that everybody is using the same account. So I'm not really diversifying my risk, right? So there are a lot of aspects here that the end user needs to be aware. But where do we find this information? How do we educate ourselves? And now what is the level of responsibility of the businesses of having this knowledge as well? What do you think about this?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think this is probably something related not necessarily to banking or finance. I mean, this phenomenon you just described, but more, let's say, to the current state of capitalism we're living, where marketing and sales play a very important role, and a lot of things are being commoditized. And if something can be commoditized, it gets commoditized. And I can see, where you come from when you say that this can create some kind of unseen risks, where the user thinks that things are different, but they're not, and then at the same time, you're like, who's handling my money? So there's definitely a lot of good questions there. I'm not sure if these issues can be entirely addressed, to be honest with you, because we're just talking about the free market, right? Where anyone can create, let's say, a new business, a new banking business, a new crypto business. And then at the same time, someone might say, maybe you need to regulate X, Y, Z. But quite often regulation can cause other issues down the line. So I'm not really entirely sure what's the solution there. I know that, for example, after the collapse of FTX, we saw exchanges publishing proof of reserves, saying this is where your crypto is being held, and we have all your crypto in a safe place and all that. Yeah. But and that was interesting because they weren't really obliged to do this, right? So I guess that was a case of the market actually doing the right thing without nudging. At the same time, you do have to go through these events for something to happen. Whether the consumers realize this is actually a risk, and then the provider of the service or the product, they take certain actions to demonstrate that this risk doesn't exist, or then the regulation steps in and says, okay, you have to do X, Y, Z. So I guess, yeah, there are mechanisms obviously to deal with these issues. But right now we might be in this kind of limbo state within certain technologies where we don't know what problems might arise, and we kind of hope that, this is not going to happen. Nothing bad is going to happen. And if it happens, then we're going to, cross that bridge when we come to it.
Not so long ago, someone told me that there are AI agents who are able to make a purchase online using their cards or their payment methods. So for example, when I say that, hey, I want to order a pizza with whatever topping, this is my address, and the AI agent is actually executing everything. Where do you see and how do you see the responsibility, the risk, the fraud opportunity, all of these? And what do you think that how far AI will go when it comes to using our finances and our assets, humans, on behalf?
So there's definitely a lot of risk in AI agents being used in scams and fraud, like messaging and things like that. This is already happening. In terms of agents using our finances, I think there's not much risk right now, because I would presume, fraud aside, that if you want to hand over control of your finances to an agent, you'd give it permission to do certain things, right? So if most people just use their money, they just have some money saved up and they use it to consume certain things, or they make some investments, I would expect that if they would trust this money to an agent, they would know what they're doing. And actually, these types of investment agents, robo-advisors already exist.
Sure.
So I don't think that's so much a big of a concern. But yeah, in terms of fraud, that's definitely a bit, we're seeing a lot of that, like more sophisticated chatbots, but doing all sorts of things. Even still, there's also a lot of fraud still taking place through traditional means. Just AI agents is just another tool, really.
Exactly. It's a never-ending cat and mouse game, right? That who is leading the market? The fraudsters who are coming up with new ways and trying to outsmart the system, or the tools and the regulatory bodies who are always trying to catch up with the latest, right? So what do you think now? Who is winning at the moment? Is it the creative ones, and with the AI, there are a lot of opportunities to creative your way out of the system and create fraud and scams? Or you think that we still have like good regulatory environment, safe financial setup?
Yeah, fraud will always be there, but I think the big winners of the current AI revolution, again, are like the little guys. It's the hedge fund, where you can have 3 guys, and then with the help of AI, it is as if they're like 15 or 20 people, because they use AI to do research and to look into investments and all that. It's the sole entrepreneur who can come up with a new idea. It's maybe the young department head of a bank who is very motivated and wants to become like an entrepreneur and is like, I'm going to revamp my whole department using AI. I still think that most of the benefits, they go to this type of people, right?
Yes, and we can see that obviously whoever has the financial means can lead everything in terms of scamming or even fighting the scammers, because there is still a lot of energy and effort and obviously financial assets you need to develop yourself, the relevant tools for both. Talk about the future. What do you think? What will be the bank of future look like, and how will AI and the emerging technologies will reshape banking operations and the customer relationships? Let's say we are talking even in 2 years, but I wanted to say 5 years, but let's say 2 years, because everything is so quickly happening. What do you think? What are we talking about? Where is banking? What are the new technologies? Are we winning? Are we benefiting out of that? Or we just lost a lot of money to fraud?
Yeah, so I think in terms of banking, banks will don't want to say digital first, but it will become more digital. We're going to see more AI in terms of our interactions with banks. And we're probably going to see banks also maybe adding some crypto into the mix, whether the user is exposed to it directly or not. So maybe if you want to transfer money to another country, so maybe part of this transaction will take place in stablecoin. It will be faster, but you will not have to touch yourself any stablecoin, right? So I think these are some of the main changes that we should expect to see in the next 3 to 5, maybe 10 years or so in the case of stablecoins. I mean, all of this, in theory at least, should be good for the consumers, right? We're talking about a better consumer experience in all sorts of ways, whether it's having a 24/7 line support through an AI agent, so when a human is not available, you speak with an AI on the phone, or whether it's faster and cheaper transactions. We just have to see how much of this actually materializes, again, because the banks may not necessarily be incentivized to do this, but I think solution providers, fintechs will show up, and eventually the banks will have to start adopting some of these solutions and improvements.
I can't help but ask, what about CBDCs? What do you think? Where are we going to see them? How will they eliminate that banking layer, which is now sitting as a middleman, controlling everything and making sure that all the regulations and the rules are kept? What do you think? How CBDC will reshape everything in the future, and how do we benefit out of that as consumers?
Yeah, I think CBDCs are interesting, but they're very centralized, I mean, I can see the benefits of this technology from a, let's say, government's point of view, but at the same time, we're talking about an insane amount of power and centralization, which I think it can be very concerning, and we might see a lot of tensions in the next few years if CBDC is rolled out, like the Euro CBDC. I'm not sure how much they're meant to benefit the end user. So someone can make up all kinds of arguments, but I'd expect to first see the implementation before, make up my mind. I'm personally not a huge fan of them because it feels like a government attempt to hijack the crypto movement, whereas you could just adopt crypto. But governments work in very particular ways. I'm not very optimistic about that direction. I'm more, I'm more interested in, for example, things like a Bitcoin reserve in the US rather than the CBDC euro. I'm not sure if this will even help with the many of the problems that Europe faces right now.
So you think that decentralization is the way forward, other than just centralization using the new technologies, right? Because with the decentralization, we still have a better sight of what's happening and maybe even better control, right? But what do you think that even if it's something decentralized, who is going to implement all of those regulatory burdens and make sure that everything is maintained? What do you think? Where's the balance between decentralization and centralization in this case?
Yeah, I think that's also ideological, right? Because you can't say, I think the balance is in the middle. Like a government will most likely want to have everything centralized because usually that's the tendency of a government to accumulate power. Even though, this can be discussed, that's probably more the topic of political philosophy. In terms of people who are ideologically the other end of the spectrum, they prefer decentralization, which there are certain issues with that. Like anyone who has made a crypto transaction in their life know that it can be a bit scary when you send out money to a crypto wallet and you're like, is this actually a legitimate wallet? If I make a mistake, what can I do? Can I get my money back? So the answer kind of depends. I think it's very ideologically driven. It's very difficult to say it should be A or B. Decentralized systems, in certain ways, they can be, let's say, more efficient. They can have less friction, but at the same time, they can be slower in other aspects, right? So with blockchain, you can remove the middleman out of the equation in many ways, but you end up with a lower volume of transactions. So a lot of, let's say, topics around here, they also revolve around subtle technicalities, which are still taking shape. So we do know things are going to be different in 5 or 10 years, and people have different positions as to what's the best way to go about things. So I do think we're definitely going to see some kind of battle, which we're already seeing between the two ends of the spectrum.
Before we wrap up, I need to ask you this. What do you think? What's the next big thing? What do you think businesses and even individuals need to focus on and definitely keep their attention at? What do you think? Where are we going? And in your personal opinion, what can be that low-hanging fruit? Like I was asking you, I don't know, 15 years ago, that was obviously the Bitcoin or, this AI revolution. What's the next big thing? Where are we going with all of these technologies?
So I think we're going to see wider adoption on both ends. And in terms of the next big thing, because it's not always easy to predict the next big thing, because, we've been talking about AI. I've been talking about AI for 10 years and other people have been talking about AI longer than that. And it still took a long time for this to materialize into something. Yeah. So other than the wider adoption of AI in crypto, in traditional finance, the next big thing might be quantum computing. And I say might be because we don't know, right? We have to wait and see. But if this happens, then we're going to see huge changes, especially if you think that we're going to have AI models that can be trained on exponentially more data. So they're going to be like really incredibly intelligent. So this might be some kind of singularity and revolution there where we won't be able to really understand what are going to be the implications of. But that's like, this is one of those things that I don't want to say, it's going to happen within the next 5 years. No one knows unless they're really deep into this area of quantum computing. So other than that, I'd say like everyone, whether it's business owner, entrepreneur, or professional, whatever, they need to prepare for an environment of wider adoption, potentially job replacement, displacement, as well as jobs changing and roles changing, like different requirements. So a software developer will work in a different way. So if a company decides to keep software developers, they will be asked to work in a completely different way through the use of AI. And similarly, like those companies that if they provide a service or a product, let's say banking institutions, they will need to start thinking about the fact that customers will expect 24/7 service through AI agents, things like that. So I think all of this is going to play a very big role in the next few years.
So what shall we study? What shall we educate ourselves about? And how Soltesz Academy can help us from this?
Yeah, first of all, I acquire some basic AI skills. So like 10, 15 years ago, everyone was learning about Word and Excel and PowerPoint, and now everyone knows how to use them. Now I think everyone should know some prompt engineering, understand the basics of agents, but also understand AI on a high level, like AI strategy, and also understand how to build AI roadmaps for businesses, departments, as well as their own career. And that's what we do with the Soltesz Academy, right? So we work with individuals and businesses to help them understand how to make the most of AI, but also to think about it strategically. So we teach both soft skills and hard skills, so you can get a 360-degree view and then take action. But each path, I believe, should be individualized, right? So I don't think the answer is as simple as, you just need to learn skills ABC. Some professionals might prefer to become AI leaders in a certain field, or they might prefer to pick up technical skills or something else entirely. But we do know that everyone will need to learn more about AI no matter what.
And that is so true, that things are changing so quickly that roles disappear, but new roles appear. And we always need to see the organization from a different perspective. A couple of years ago, the agile was basically everywhere. What I see, obviously, because I'm working with payments and banking issues, that the role of the, let's say, chief payment officer, the person who is making decisions over payments and banking, is no longer as it was before, because it has an overlook of so many different aspects, including the AI and, of course, the technology, but so many other parts as well. So the education never ends, and finding the right knowledge, what you need to adopt, I think this is going to be the challenge, because if you think about it, whatever happened 5 years ago might not be relevant even today. So things are really, really speeding up. Is there something that we haven't mentioned, but you strongly believe in and you think that we should still mention and then talk about before we wrap up?
No, I think that was a very extensive conversation. We covered so much ground, and I hope that our listeners and viewers, they take at least a few bits of wisdom from this, because, all these changes that we're discussing, they are underway, right? They're happening in real time right in front of us. You hear new stories every day, whether it's job displacement, crypto, this, regulation, that. So the best way to be prepared is to be informed.
That's right. And I would strongly recommend for everyone to check out the solteszacademy.com. when there are so many interesting subjects and topics that can enhance your work and obviously your business as well. But I think I'm talking in the name of Stylianos as well, where I'm encouraging everyone to please reach out to us with any kind of questions, any kind of comments. We want to know, what are you busy with? What are your questions? Where are you with different projects, not only from the payment and banking perspective, but also from the technology and AI development. So Stylianos, of course, we can reach you at Stelios at the academy.com. But what are the other ways that people can reach you, talk to you, and what are those subjects that you would like to hear about?
Yeah, sure. So I'm looking forward to hearing from anyone who wants any advice on AI or Web3 or any of the topics we discussed. And again, we help professionals and businesses get started with AI and data science. Thanks everyone for being here, and looking forward to hearing from you soon.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and expertise with us. And thank you for everyone who watched us. Together, we can create an ethical, transparent, and standardized payment and banking industry just by talking about the problems and putting it into the light. Thank you so much, Stylianos. Thank you for everyone.
Thank you.
Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Marcia Klingon-Smith. Instant payments is transforming the way money moves all across the globe, across all the different industries. A recent study showed that 42% of instant payment transactions actually happen on the evenings and weekends. About $200 billion is currently locked up in the European financial system today. And instant payments really can help unlock this liquidity. The future of finance is instant, and those who adapt will thrive.